What's going on, folks? Welcome to Midweek Study Hall. If it's your first time here, my name is Philip Godfrey. If you're returning, welcome back, Bible Study family. And so, the foundation of Midweek Study Hall and also weekly Bible study is the scriptures in Matthew 6:33. We hear the Messiah speaking, and he tells us to seek ye first the kingdom of the Father and his righteousness, and all things shall be added unto you. So, we gather here to see, seek, and serve the kingdom of the Father. All right. And so today we're going to be continuing our study series entitled From Creation to Revelation, where we're walking through the entirety of the text, the entirety of the Bible this year, book by book and chapter by chapter. Today we'll be looking at the book of Isaiah, chapters 36 through 39. Chapters 36 through 39. So a quick little interlude here for the teaching today. So let's go ahead and jump in. And I'm reading from the King James Version if you want to follow along. All right. And so in Isaiah chapter 36, what we'll begin to see in the chapters that we're looking at today is a brief historical interlude of sorts that kind of pivots away from the overall prophetic theme of the book of Isaiah. But I still believe that there's, through the text, and the fact that it's there, that there's still relevance to these chapters and where they are placed inside of the book of Isaiah. So what we will have here, we already talked about these things over in Second Kings and First Chronicles, but we will be discussing them again here tonight. So let's start in Isaiah 36, verse 1. And it says this: Now it came to pass in the 14th year of King Hezekiah that Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the defenced cities of Judah and took them. And so what we have here is that the writer is setting the location and also the period for the information that he's presenting to us and the information that will follow. What we have now is that Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, has come up essentially against the people of Judah, and he has taken some of the land, he's taken some of the cities, and now he is going after Hezekiah. He's sending delegation from his kingdom to Hezekiah to speak to them and basically to try to threaten Hezekiah to give the land and give the people over to him, because either way he's going to take it. All right. And again, this is the same information we looked at over in Second Kings and First Chronicles, but it is here for a reason, and we will talk about that in a second. Let's jump down to verses 2 through 10, all right, of chapter 36. And the king of Assyria sent Rabshakeh and from Lachish to Jerusalem unto King Hezekiah with a great army, and he stood by the conduit of the upper pool in the highway of the fuller's field. Then came forth unto him Eliakim, Hilkiah's son, which was over the house, and Shebna. You guys remember Shebna from Sunday? Shebna the scribe, and Joah, Asaph's son, the recorder. And Rabshakeh said unto them, Say ye now to Hezekiah, Thus saith the great king. So he's decreeing that his king of Assyria, Sennacherib, is the great king. The king of Assyria, what confidence is this wherein thou trust? So who are you putting your trust in? In vain is what he's implying here. Verse 5. I say, sayest thou, but they are but vain words. I have counsel and strength for war. Now on whom dost thou trust, that thou rebellest against me? So he's saying that they're rebelling against Assyria. Lo, thou trustest in the staff of this broken reed on Egypt, whereon if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all that trust in him. But if thou say to me, We trust in the Lord our God, is it not he whose high places and whose altars Hezekiah hath taken away, and said to Judah and to Jerusalem, Ye shall worship before this altar? Now therefore give pledges, I pray thee, to my master, the king, his master, the king of Assyria, and I will give thee 2,000 horses, if thou be able on thy part to set riders upon them. How then wilt thou turn away the face of one captain of the least of my master's servants, and put thy trust on Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? And am I now come up without the Lord against this land to destroy it? The Lord said unto me, Go up against this land and destroy it. So here what we have The king of Assyria has sent his delegation, sent some representatives in the form of Rabshakeh and an army up to Jerusalem to have a conversation with Hezekiah. But Hezekiah, basically his leaders, his delegates, they go out and have this conversation with Rabshakeh. And so he sends out Eliakim, he sends out Shebna, and then it says he sent out Joah. And so they are talking and they're having this interaction. And so basically, Rabshakeh and the Assyrians are saying, hey, who are you putting your trust in? Because that person is going to fail you. You need to make an alliance with us. You need to come under our leadership. You need to come under our rule. You no longer need to trust in the Egyptians. And then he goes on to say, like, but if you say that you're not trusting in the Egyptians and you say you're trusting in the Father, then you don't need to trust in that either, because the Father is the one who has sent me here to do this and to destroy the land that you are dwelling in, the land that you are operating in. And so what he is decreeing here is that he's going to overtake them. Assyria is going to overtake them. That system is going to overtake the people of the Father. And you can really see the confusion that this sets in motion. So Rabshakeh is a picture, and this Rabshakeh specifically is a picture of confusion and also instability. Thank you. Destabilization. So what he's seeking to do here is sow seeds of confusion into the people of Judah, and to keep them from believing not only in the Father, but also keep them from believing in King Hezekiah. Hezekiah's done a pretty good job up until this point, but he doesn't care about that. What he wants is Assyria wants to assert their will, and they want to rule over the entirety of the earth. They want to be the power of powers here in this realm. And they're going to do whatever they can to get there. And so you can think about, you can see here the things that we spoke about on Sunday when we were going through the prophecy. So when Isaiah's giving the prophecies, like, woe to those who put their trust in Egypt, woe to those that put their trust in horses, woe to those who move away from my commandments and my judgments. When he's saying these things at the leading of the Father, this is the foundation, and this is the prerequisite for what he was talking about, because the prophecies have not happened. We saw the prophecy against Shebna. Shebna's still here. The prophecies have not happened yet, but we see that the theme of those prophecies was already going forth. They had already began to trust in Egypt instead of trusting in the Father. They had already began. He was offering them horses, and so if they had taken those horses, then they would have been in alignment or in breach of what the Father said, to not be putting your trust in horses. So we see that the prophecies of Isaiah are already underlying, the themes of those prophecies are already at work in the nation, even before the prophecies go forth, or even before the prophecies begin to fulfill. Does that make sense? Hopefully everybody sees that. And so none of those things have occurred, but the stage is being set for fulfillment. Let's look at verses 13 through 18. Then Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in the Jews' language and said, "Hear ye the words of the great king." Again, he's aligning his king, Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, as the great king. There's only one great king. But let's keep going. The king of Assyria, verse 14. "Thus saith the king, let not Hezekiah deceive you, for he shall not be able to deliver you." Of course he can't. Only the Father can deliver us. "Neither let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will surely deliver us. This city shall not be delivered into the hand of the king of Syria. Here hearken not to Hezekiah, for thus saith the king of Assyria, make an agreement with me by a present, and come out to me, and eat ye every one of his vine, and every one of his fig tree, and drink ye every one of the waters of his own cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own land, a land of corn and wine, a land of bread and vineyards. Beware lest Hezekiah persuade you, saying, the Lord will deliver us. Hath any of the gods of the nations delivered his land out of the hand of the king of Syria?" Up until this point. And so prior to this in the text, what we have are the Jewish leaders, Shebna, Eliakim, and Joah. What they are doing here, they had asked Rabshakeh to not speak to them in the language of the Jews. I think they said let me look it up to make sure, but I believe they asked him to speak to them in the language of the Syrians. Hold on one second. 36. Um, yes. It says, speak to them in the Syrian language because they understood the Syrian language. But Rabshakeh does not accept that or accept that wish or that ask of them or whatever. He does not follow those. He ignored the request. Thank you, Holy Spirit. He ignored that request, and he continues to speak in the language of the Jews. In my mind, so that the Jews, that those were around them, the watchmen and those people that were there in close proximity, could hear the things that he was speaking and decreeing. He didn't want it to be a secret. He wanted to sow this instability. He wanted to sow this confusion and divisiveness. He wanted to sow that into the people. He wanted the people to hear it themselves in their own language. And so he's decreeing these things again now in the language of the Jews. And the Jews are sitting here listening, and he's telling them, do not let Hezekiah deceive you. We are going to come and we're going to take you, and it's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. Do not trust in your God, because your God is not going to save you. And we know, he said, let me go back. He then says, or before this, he even says that the king of Assyria, Sennacherib, is the great king, and none of the gods of the other lands have come and saved them. There's a few things that he must have forgotten. That the other gods of the other lands are not the one and only true living God, the God of Israel, the God of Judah at that time. He must have didn't know that. And then he didn't know that there is no great king outside of our great king, the Father. And so there are a few things working against Rabshakeh, but he's not doing this. But what I want to highlight here is verses 16 and 17. Because these are the types of things that we will have to navigate as we are living this life. Okay, they are hearing the noise from the world. They're hearing the noise from the season. They're hearing the threats. They're hearing these things, and they are being questioned with, is your Father actually going to take care of you? And there are some people who've asked you that question. Is your Father going to actually take care of you? And then they said this in verse 16. Hey, don't worry about that. Don't worry about your leaders. They've led you astray. Don't listen to Hezekiah. Hearken to us and make an agreement with us by a present. And we have to be mindful of the presents that we receive, and make sure that they're not indicative yet indicative of agreements that we are entering into. Then it says, come on, let's eat together, because that's another indication of an agreement. So we must ensure that the presents we receive and the meals that we partake in, the relationships that we are doing those, we are partaking in as we fulfill those things, that those things are not the Assyrians trying to come into our camp, whatever the enemy is trying to enter into what the Father is doing in our lives, okay? And then in verse 17, it says this, it says, until I come and take you away to a land like your own. Here, Rabshakeh and the king of Assyria, they are offering a land to the people of Judah. They are offering, they say, hey, you can come and you can make an agreement with us and we'll take you to a land. We got a land for you. But the issue here that I find in the text is the text says a land like your own. So guess what? It's not their own. So it's not the land that the Father has set aside for them. It's not a land flowing with milk and honey. It's a land like, a similar to a land that is almost what the Father had, but just short of it. Listen, do not stop for a likeness of your promise. Do not stop for a likeness of your promise, of your season, of your ability, of your posture, of your purpose, of your calling, of your assignment. Do not do not take the offer of the likeness of your spouse. Don't take a likeness. Do not enter into agreement. Do not accept a likeness. Why? Because the Father had already had and designed a specific place for them. And guess what? His place is not a likeness. It's the real thing. Because the likeness is going to fade and it won't look like it anymore. So this saying, instead of a land flowing with milk and honey that's like their land, but it's not their actual land, instead of a land flowing with milk and honey, which is what the Father promised them, they were going to get a land of corn and wine, a land where they can get drunk, a land where they can get fat, a land where they have to work the land. I think it says some also, I don't have it in my notes, but this up here, yeah, a land of bread and vineyards. That's the land, but that's not the land that the Father had for him. All right. The chapter then goes on to have Rabshakeh continue to try to encourage the Jews to listen to him and not believe their God would save them because none of these other countries' gods have saved them. Let's move into chapter 37, all right? So in chapter 37, what we see in verses 1 and 2, let's read that first and then we'll talk about it. And it came to pass when King Hezekiah heard it, he rent his clothes and covered himself with sackcloth and went into the house of the Lord. And he sent Eliakim, who was over the house, and Shebna the scribe, and the elders and of the priests covered with sackcloth unto Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos. So now we see the introduction of Isaiah as part of this passage. But what we see happening is Hezekiah hears, because Rabshakeh is talking to the leaders, okay? He's talking to the people of Judah. He's not talking directly to King Hezekiah. And so now we see that Hezekiah has heard what Rabshakeh has said and what essentially the king of Assyria has said against through Rabshakeh. And so Hezekiah responds in the way that we should respond when we receive news, when we receive attacks like this, when we receive word that causes us or tries to force us thank you. When we receive word or words that produce instability and confusion in our life, this is the process that we should take. We should do what Hezekiah did. He humbled himself, said he rent his clothes, covered himself with sackcloth. That's a depiction of humbleness, humility. So he humbles himself and then goes into the presence of the Father. And to top it off, he sends some messengers he sends his leaders to Isaiah the prophet to hear the Father's heart on the matter. And that is what you have to do. And he gave us another what's it called? Like another sample of what we can do as well, down a little bit further. But we need to get into the presence of the Father when these things come up against us. When something is trying, whatever the things of this world, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the things of this system are trying to force you to believe something that is not true about your Father, that you know isn't true about your Father. We must humble ourselves like Hezekiah, get into his presence and seek the Father's heart on the matter. All right. And so next, he sends these leaders to Isaiah. We see that. And let's jump down to verses 6 and 7 and see what the Father's heart on the matter is. And Isaiah said unto them, Thus shall ye say unto your master, Thus saith the Lord, Be not afraid of the words that thou hast heard, wherewith the servants of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. So they messed up. Behold, I, the Father, will send a blast upon him, and he shall hear a rumor and return to his own land, and I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land. So now the Father, through Isaiah, affirms and decrees that the things that he has heard, that Hezekiah has heard, that the people have heard, will not come to pass against him, partly because of the blasphemy that has taken place and how they have spoken against his ability and his name and have elevated themselves to the position that was only designed for him, the enemies, the Assyrians. And so about that same time, Assyria has sent Hezekiah a letter. So he receives a letter from them basically saying the same things, like, hey, don't let the word of the Father fool you. Don't let the Father's heart on the matter fool you. We still coming for you. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what this letter says. And now we see Hezekiah's response, and we see how we can implement, a strategy. Thank you, Holy Spirit. A strategy was the word I was looking for, that we can implement from the life of Hezekiah as well. He receives this letter. So anytime you receive a letter in the form of a letter about your finances, a letter about your health, a letter about your relationships, a letter about your job, a letter about your children, a letter about your marriage, a letter about some legal situation, a letter about whatever, any type of letter you receive, do this right here. Now, if the Father tell you to do it, do this. Hezekiah takes this letter that he receives. This letter is speaking against the Father. It's speaking against the Father's will, and it's decreeing to Hezekiah that the Father isn't going to show up for her. And whatever he says, don't listen to it. So he takes this letter and he spreads it before the Father. And he prays and asks the Father to move in this situation. He takes a letter. He lays it at the feet of the Father. And you can do this, like you can do it physically so that you can get the picture. Take the letter, open it up, lay it at the feet of the Father and say, hey, Father, I'm praying that you would move in this situation of the letter. This letter says this is what the letter is from and what it means. I'm asking you as your child to move in this situation. And so again, what we see is Isaiah is led by the Father to bring another prophetic word to Hezekiah because of what Hezekiah has done, entered into his presence and asked the Father to move on this situation. And so through Isaiah, the Father decrees that the Assyrians would not even come into the land anymore, and that he would personally defend, well, in this situation, and he would personally defend this land, Jerusalem, for himself. And we see the fulfillment of this as the chapter ends. Let's look at verses 36 and 38. Then the angel of the Lord went forth and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000, 185,000. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. So Sennacherib, king of Assyria, departed and went and returned and dwelt at Nineveh. So he went back to his land. Nineveh is also the same Nineveh that Jonah, So anyway, so he goes back to Nineveh, and it came to pass as he was worshiping in the house of Nisroch. Nisroch here is a depiction of an eagle, which is so interesting when you begin to see who the nations are and these things. And so the Syrians and Babylonians worship the eagle. That was their god. And now a lot of nations have eagles as their on their flags and as their symbols and whatnot. It's just interesting to me. That Adramelech and Sharezer, his sons, smote him with the sword, and they escaped into the land of Armenia, and Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his stead. So now we see that just like Isaiah prophesied, the death of Sennacherib has happened in his own land and at the hands of his children, his own children. Let's move down into chapter 38. So even though like those prophecies that we looked at prior to now haven't come to pass just yet, we see that Isaiah is still, the Father is still confirming Isaiah's position and status as a prophet, even with these prophetic words, just daily, I guess, just on the regular prophetic words that he's giving out. All right, chapter 38, verse 1. In those days was Hezekiah sick unto death, and Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, came unto him and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, set thine house in order, for thou shalt die and not live. Okay? This is interesting, but never mind. We can decree over ourselves, as the text says, that we shall live and not die. But here the Father has sent a word through the prophet to Hezekiah, and Hezekiah does what we have seen him do prior to this when he receives news that he don't like or news that's troubling to him. He goes into the presence of the Father and he seeks the Father's matter on the heart. And ultimately what we see is that the Father here extends his life because of what he has done. Let's look at that in verses 2 through 8. Then Hezekiah turned his face toward the wall and prayed unto the Lord and said, Remember now, O Lord, I beseech thee, how I have walked with thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore. Then came the word of the Lord to Isaiah, saying, Go and say to Hezekiah, Thus saith the Lord, the God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will add unto thy days 15 years. And I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend this city, and this shall be a sign unto thee. So this is the sign that you're going to see to show you that what I'm saying is true. From the Lord, that the Lord will do this thing that he has spoken. Behold, I will bring again the shadow of the degrees, which is gone down in the sundial of Ahaz, 10 degrees backwards. And so the sun returned 10 degrees, by which degrees it was gone down. And so basically time shifted backwards. The Father shifted time backwards to prove to Hezekiah the way he said was going to come. This gets really interesting when we get into like the calendar and all those things and the actual Jewish calendar, which I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but you can study it out. And so it talks about, there's one passage it might be in the Apocrypha that talks about how the moon is sick, the sun and the moon are sick. So basically they're not in sync anymore, and it's not in sync because of what's going on here. It's very interesting to get down and really see some of that and get through some of those rabbit holes. So if you ever get down and have those questions, begin researching, okay? And so the chapter ends here, chapter 38 ends with Hezekiah writing about how he was healed and how he recovered from his sickness, all right? Let's move into chapter 39, all right? And we're going to finish up. Chapter 39, verses 1 and 2. At that time, Merodach-Baladan, the son of Baladan, king of Babylon, sent letters and a present to Hezekiah, for he had heard that he had been sick and was recovered. And Hezekiah was glad of them and showed them in the house of his precious things, the silver and the gold, the spices, the precious ointment, and all the house of his armor, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion that Hezekiah showed them not. Let's stop right here. And so what we see now is that the king of Babylon, which is Assyria, the king of Babylon has the king of Babylon, they sent letters to Hezekiah. They sent him presents, essentially just acknowledging, that he was sick and he's recovered, and just, I guess just, well wishes, how we would say it today. We send like a well wishes card or well wishes gift, or we send somebody dinner or something. I don't know if that's just a southern thing, but somebody gets sick, you send them food, take food over to the house. And so Hezekiah is so excited. He's so pleased. He's so glad that someone, and this is my interpretation. He's so glad that someone has acknowledged him, and he's glad that it was Babylon, like this nation, that acknowledged him. That it says in verse 2 that he was glad of them and showed them the house of his precious things. The issue here, in my opinion, is that he was glad. It pleased him. He was seeking a position that was verified or validated once Babylon did that for him. And that gave him some sense of encouragement. That gave him some sense of status. And how this translates to us today is that we must be intentional to not seek the approval of men in such a way that when we are approved, that we begin to make poor decisions, that we begin to lack discernment in certain places or about certain people, because that's what Hezekiah ends up doing here. He sees the Babylon, they send them gifts, and he's like, oh man, this is so amazing that he's been acknowledged by this leader, this leader, this nation. And what does he do? He shows them everything that he has, even the things that were meant to stay private. That the receiving of that gift, which there's a passage in Proverbs, I believe, that talks about receiving gifts from kings or something like that. I'm gonna have to find it, but it talks about he receives this gift and this acknowledgement from this nation, and it brought him joy, and that joy brought his guard down. That joy brought his discernment down, and he was not able to see and discern that the Babylonians were Assyrians and they were enemies. And now he's shown the enemies the entirety of his plan. He's shown the enemies the entirety of everything that he has. He's taken their presents, he's taken the gifts, and he's given them everything that he has. All the things that were ultimately designed to be hidden, he had exposed. And because of that, there were consequences. Let's look at verses 3 through 8. Then came Isaiah the prophet unto King Hezekiah and said unto him, what said these men? And from whence came they unto thee? And Hezekiah said, they are come from a far country unto me, even from Babylon. They came from a far country to see me. That's what he said, even from Babylon. Then says he, what have they seen in thine house? This is Isaiah asking Hezekiah. Hezekiah answered, all that is in mine house have they seen. There's nothing among my treasures that I have not shown them. Then Isaiah said to Hezekiah, hear the word of the Lord of hosts. Behold, the days come that all that is in thine house and all that which thy fathers have laid up in store until this day shall be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord, and of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away, and they shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. Then said Hezekiah to Isaiah, good is the word of the Lord which thou hast spoken. He said, moreover, for there shall be peace and truth in my days. I really don't like that last sentence, that last verse about Hezekiah. But let's go back. And so what we see here is Isaiah, the father, then, because of what Hezekiah's done, the father sends Isaiah to speak to him this word. And ultimately, Hezekiah and his household and the nation and all the things, the generational wealth and all those things were given over to these enemies because of Hezekiah's lack of discernment, because Hezekiah desired desired position in that group or that club or whatever you want to call it, rather than obedience to the Father and a yielding to the Father and discernment of the season or discernment of the situation. And so we have to make sure that we are not desiring a seat at the table so much that we give away the future. And that's what Hezekiah did. He wanted a seat so bad that he gave away the future. And then he says, and when it says that, like, he's not going to, his bloodline is going to be wiped away because his sons will become eunuchs. There will be no more descendants from him after his sons. And he said, it's cool, for at least things will be fine as I live. And ultimately, that's what that's the decision that a lot of people are making in this season, unfortunately. They are trading a position, an opportunity, a seat at the table. They're trading them for their generations. And then they're saying, well, when they find out, they're saying, well, at least I got what I needed in this season. Let it not be said of us. Let us not be a people who do that. Let us be a people who sow seeds for our children, who sow and water and produce fruit for the benefit of our children, not for us to lose it because we made a poor decision, because we wanted something that was never designed for us to have in the first place. The Father has everything that you need. The Father has everything that we need. And if we will seek him, he will set us at positions and tables, and we won't need the applause and the approval of men when we get there, if we will yield to the process. Okay? So that's all I got for you guys today. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you need any information about the ministry, myself, or all that stuff is down in the description box below. We also meet on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. for weekly Bible study. You're welcome to join us with that. If this is your first time here, we'll be looking at Isaiah, starting in chapter 40, roughly maybe to 50, 53, somewhere in there. So go ahead and read those chapters. I don't know exactly the chapters, but we're going to be in 40 plus. So just read those chapters, and I'll see you guys on Sunday. Listen, I love you, but more important than that, the Father loves you. Let him love you, folks. All right? Start before you're ready, and don't stop. I'll see you guys next time.